This is the examination of the hidden human condition.
You're listening to the Hidden Killers Podcast.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Brueski.
We are having a conversation today with Eric Faddis, attorney, trial lawyer, civil and criminal litigator, former felony prosecutor. We're talking about Bryan Kohberger, the DNA from 3 men found at the scene. A lot of us didn't know about this. There's that mystery glove found at the crime scene. This is the defense for Kohberger speaking out and pointing out some of those inconsistencies, or as they'd like to present it, as an inconsistency. It may be them grandstanding and trying to influence a potential jury pool in Moscow, Idaho, who we don't know who it is yet, but essentially trying to run this almost like a political campaign. We got to get some forms of doubt out here because it was looking very bleak. And some of these may be valid forms of doubt. But what we don't know is where these other 2 samples of DNA were found. And we have to remember, this was a party house, a college house. It very much does matter where the DNA is found that they're looking at. And we have to remember Kohberger's DNA was found on a knife sheath underneath one of the victims. I would not be remotely surprised if there was far more than 3 male DNAs found in this home that are from different people, being the type of home that it was. But doesn't it matter very much of exactly where that sort of DNA was found in relation to the crime scene, not just that it was on the property?
Oh, certainly. Yeah. I mean, like you said, one of the victims even was male. This was a college house. There are likely dudes coming in and out. Yeah. And so just the very fact of DNA being somewhere near this crime scene is not overly shocking. No. But, in their motion, defense wanted a detailed breakdown of how these DNA conclusions were allegedly drawn that tied Bryan Kohberger to the scene and how they ruled out other potential victims. And defense is right to ask for that. They're asking for the government to kind of show their work, like back in math class, to show how they got to where they claim they got to. And that's totally appropriate. And so I think, like you said, additionally, the defense is presenting kind of a counter narrative because most of what has been publicly released on this case has been, pretty damning against Bryan Kohberger.
The state's arguing that the DNA from the buccal swab provided by the suspect matched the DNA found on the knife sheath at the scene. The genetic genealogy results, they say, play no role in the upcoming trial and are inconsequential to proving the suspect's guilt or innocence. Do you agree with that the genealogical DNA doesn't play a part in this? Because I think there'd be a lot of arguments about that.
Yeah, not necessarily. And I would have to see the actual DNA report to give a perfectly accurate position on it. But early on, we even heard that, in terms of how they claim to have matched Kohberger's DNA to that knife sheath, it was allegedly from, or it could have been from, a sample from Kohberger's father or a family member, and they tried to kind of connect the dots in that fashion. But I'm not 100% certain the government, I know what they've said publicly, but I'm not certain they have a 100% DNA match of Bryan Kohberger to the knife sheath. And so in terms of how they got there and whether there was some genealogical family tree that they used, that kind of stuff is absolutely important to look into for defense, and they're right to do it.
Is a defense right now? I mean, obviously, they this is their job. They should be doing this. Are they, from your standpoint at this, are they just trying to throw every possible thing, every possible doubt at this that they can and see if they get any sort of headway at this moment in time? Or are these truly valid arguments that they're making?
I think it could be both. I think that at least on the surface, from what I've reviewed, the DNA motion from defense seems appropriate based on the nature of the investigation and the alleged DNA link. But also, they absolutely have to assert every possible ground they can on behalf of Bryan Kohberger, in part to preserve that ground for an appeal. Sure. So if Bryan Kohberger is convicted of these murders, his appellate counsel can argue that, hey, we raised this DNA issue early on in this case, and the court got it wrong in ruling against us. And so appellate court, you need to give us a new trial because of this. So I think a big part of it is also just preserving every issue that the defense can for a potential appeal later on.
This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast
with Tony Brueski.